Hey guys, thanks for watching the show. If you like what I do, please give this video a like and subscribe. Make sure to click the bell notification so you don't miss an episode. Zelda AI was made in part by using ChatGPT. Thanks to these people for letting me use their assets. Spoilers ahead for the following games. Now, let's begin. Alright Vi, it's time for another conversation. I have some questions and want your expertise on them.
Master Belmont, it would be an honor to engage with you. What is the topic of discussion this time?
Quite simply, we need to talk about the Triforce Split mechanic. I believe that I've discovered something that not only doesn't make sense, but when you put the pieces together, implies something rather sinister behind the scenes. Are you ready to talk about some deep Zelda lore?
What would you like to know about Master Belmont?
For now, let's get into it. Why is it that the Triforce splits when it is touched by a mortal?
The reason why the Triforce splits when it is touched by a mortal in the Zelda lore is due to the nature of the Triforce itself. The Triforce is said to be a manifestation of the three goddesses who created the world of Hyrule, Ferora, and Nehru. According to legend, the Triforce was left behind by the goddesses after they completed their work on the world and departed for the heavens. It is said that only those who possess the qualities of courage, wisdom, and power can touch the Triforce and receive its power. When a person with an unbalanced heart touches the Triforce, it splits into three pieces, one for courage, one for wisdom, and one for power. This is because the Triforce recognizes that the person is not worthy of possessing all three aspects of its power, and so it separates the power into its individual parts. Only by collecting all three pieces can the Triforce be reunited and its full power be wielded.
Yes, when they are collected again, their power can be used to rewrite reality through wishes. The stronger the will, the stronger the Triforce's impression of that wish. Why is it though that once they are collected again, that another Triforce split doesn't happen?
It's not entirely clear why the Triforce doesn't split once it's been collected again. One possible explanation is that the Triforce may have some kind of built-in safeguard to prevent it from splitting again once it's been united. Another possibility is that the splitting of the Triforce only happens when someone touches it for the first time, and that subsequent reunification renders it immune to further splitting.
It seems to me that the split mechanism is designed only to happen once, possibly because the intended result of the split was never meant for it to come back together at all. You see, I have a theory of what is going on. I want to ask a couple of related questions though. Is it safe to assume that the entity that most identifies with each Triforce piece is the one who created it in the first place? For example, the Golden Goddess Nehru herself would be the one to most align with wisdom. And so, if she were present in Hyrule during the split, wouldn't that piece go to her?
It is not explicitly stated in the lore whether the creators of the Triforce or any other entities have a special claim to each piece of the Triforce. However, it is generally believed that the Triforce pieces resonate with individuals who embody the qualities they represent. For example, individuals who possess the qualities of wisdom are more likely to be chosen by the Triforce of Wisdom. It's also worth noting that in some cases, the Triforce pieces are specifically linked to certain individuals. For instance, the Triforce of Power is often associated with Ganon, while the Triforce of Wisdom is often associated with Princess Zelda. In other cases, the Triforce pieces may choose their bearers based on certain events or circumstances.
Ganon and Zelda are merely the two who resonates most with those pieces, as does the soul of the hero, at least normally. I am proposing that the Golden Goddesses themselves, Din, Nehru, and Ferora, would resonate even more with the pieces than Ganon, Zelda, and Link.
It's certainly possible that the Golden Goddesses themselves would resonate more with the Triforce pieces than any mortal beings. After all, they created the Triforce and imbued it with their own power. However, there isn't much in the lore to suggest that this is the case. In fact, It seems that the Triforce chooses its wielders based on their qualities and characteristics, rather than their direct connection to its creators. Ganon, Zelda, and Link are all chosen by the Triforce based on their courage, wisdom, and power, respectively. So while it's possible that the Golden Goddesses have a stronger connection to the Triforce pieces, it's not something that is explicitly stated in the lore.
Right, and those qualities are at the core of where I'm going with this. You see, each Triforce piece seems to contain a specific type of force related to its quality. You know, force, the underlying power that is in everything, at least within Zelda lore. Let's call the different ones relevant here: Power Force, Wisdom Force, and Courage Force. In each person, these three all exist, but usually one is higher than the other. And as such, I imagine that each goddess would have an astronomically high amount of their associated force.
That's an interesting concept. It's true that the Triforce pieces represent the qualities of power, wisdom, and courage, and it's possible that the goddesses themselves would have an extremely high amount of each respective force. However, it's also important to note that the Triforce is said to represent the balance of these three forces, and that no one quality should be elevated over the others. In addition, it's unclear how much the goddesses themselves are involved in the Triforce's power and distribution. While they did create the Triforce, it's possible that they have since taken a more hands-off approach and allow mortals to determine the fate of the Triforce. Nonetheless, your theory presents an interesting perspective on the nature of the Triforce and its relation to the goddesses.
The unified Triforce, yes. We are more concerned about the pieces when they are split apart. Now consider that these three entities, Ganon, Zelda, and Link, all have high force values in them for the three different types. That is what I believe the Triforce pieces are attracted to.
So, you believe that when the Triforce is split, the individual pieces are drawn to individuals who possess a high level of the corresponding force that the piece represents, and that this attraction is not only limited to the three traditional bearers, but can potentially extend to other individuals who have a strong resonance with that force.
Yes, I actually think that Goddess Hylia rigged this outcome. But that is a different topic for a different day. Consider the possibility that Din herself was in the realm when the split happened. I believe that the Triforce of Power would then go to her and not to Ganon.
It's an interesting idea, but there isn't any direct evidence to support it in the Zelda lore. In the games, it's shown that the Triforce pieces are usually attracted to those who have the most balance of their corresponding qualities, as we discussed earlier. While it's possible that the goddesses themselves could have a high amount of the corresponding force, there isn't anything in the lore to suggest that they would automatically receive the piece if a split occurred. It's also worth noting that the goddesses are typically portrayed as being above the earthly realm, so they might not be directly involved in the affairs of mortals and their Triforce pieces.
We are speaking in hypotheticals here, Fi. The goddesses would be the highest force value of that type, by virtue of having created the pieces of the relic. And that brings me to my theory. In the event of a Triforce split, the mechanism was meant to send the pieces to their creators, and not intended to go to mortals at all.
It would make sense for the pieces to be returned to their creators, as they would have the strongest resonance with the respective forces. However, it's also possible that the Triforce was designed to go to mortals who had achieved a certain level of balance between the three forces, which is why Ganon, Zelda, and Link are often depicted as the primary holders of the Triforce. But your theory is certainly worth considering.
In Skyward Sword, we see that Hylia went to great lengths to balance the force levels of the Hero of the Skies, so that way he could use the Triforce without causing a split. It is my belief that his force values involving power, wisdom, and courage are all about the same.
Yes, that is correct. In Skyward Sword, Hylia recognized that the hero, Link, was the only one capable of using the Triforce without causing a split, as his force levels were balanced. She worked to ensure that he could maintain that balance throughout his journey, so that he could ultimately reunite the Triforce and defeat Demise.
Right, her goal was to use Link to eradicate Demise with the use of the relic. Returning to the talk of the split mechanic, though, if the mortal isn't in balance, it seems like the pieces may be trying to return to the goddesses themselves.
It's possible that if a mortal isn't in balance, the Triforce pieces might be drawn back to their creators, the golden goddesses, instead of remaining with the mortal who touched them. However, it's also possible that the Triforce is simply seeking a new host who embodies the balance of power, wisdom, and courage, which are the values that the goddesses imbued the Triforce with in the first place. It's also worth noting that the Triforce seems to have a certain level of sentience and intelligence, as demonstrated by its ability to split apart and reunite, as well as its ability to grant wishes. So it's possible that the Triforce has its own motivations and desires that go beyond the intentions of the golden goddesses.
The Triforce itself does speak at the end of A Link to the Past, so yes, it has some level of awareness. Perhaps an artificial intelligence similar to that of the Master Sword. Imagine that, Vi, you might have a sister out there. Either way, it seems to try and return to the goddesses. Now we can get into the meat of where I am going with this.
Please proceed, Master Belmont. What is your theory?
That the reason why the Triforce can be used without future splits once assembled is because it was never intended to return to mortal hands. That if a split happened, the pieces were meant to return to the goddesses. End of story. I think Hylia altered the Triforce from its intended function.
It's possible that Hylia, being a goddess herself, had the power and knowledge to alter the function of the Triforce, perhaps to better suit the needs of the people of Hyrule or to achieve her own goals. It's also possible that the goddesses themselves foresaw that mortals might misuse the Triforce, and so they designed the split mechanism as a failsafe to prevent any one individual from gaining too much power. But they may not have anticipated mortals being able to reassemble the Triforce and use it without causing another split.
She had her own favored people, the Hylians, who she sent safely into the sky while she fought the demons on the surface. She created a plan to use the Triforce through Link. Interestingly, though, when Link found the pieces, they were all separated. I think that Hylia modified the split mechanic, where originally it was always meant to return to the goddesses. She instead set it so it would seek out the highest force value associated with each piece, but limited its range to be within the realm of Hyrule, where it is needed to sustain the existence of the world.
It's certainly possible that Hylia could have modified the split mechanism in this way to ensure that the Triforce stayed within Hyrule and could be used by the Hylians to maintain balance in their world.
Of course, she rigged it so it wouldn't just go to anybody. Her human incarnation would always have the highest amount of wisdom force, and the hero would always have the highest amount of courage force. I believe that she created a being with a high amount of power force as well. But Demise ultimately disrupted that plan with his curse, and thus, whoever she set up for power was ultimately trumped by whoever would be the incarnation of Demise's hatred.
It's possible that Hylia had specific individuals in mind for each piece of the Triforce, with the highest amount of the corresponding force. And it's possible that Demise's curse disrupted her plans, leading to the Triforce being split among others instead. It's worth noting that the Triforce has been split in various ways throughout the different games in the series, and the reasons and outcomes for each split can vary. So while your theory is intriguing, it's difficult to say for certain what Hylia's intentions were regarding the Triforce split and the selection of its wielders.
She was trying to safeguard her chosen people. That much is clear. You might not be willing to accept it without word from the developer, but this all makes sense. If the Triforce returned to the Golden Goddesses, then the world would decay. She changed the mechanism so the pieces would go to the mortals with the highest force value of each type. She would then create agents that would always fill that criteria. In essence, she may be guilty of taking the goddess's power in order to safeguard her people.
It's also possible that Hylia's plan was simply to ensure that the Triforce remained in the hands of those who were most worthy of using it. It's also possible that she didn't intend for the Triforce to be used at all, but rather saw it as a last resort in case of extreme circumstances. Regardless of her motives, it's clear that the Triforce plays a significant role in the fate of Hyrule and its inhabitants. Whether it was intended to return to the goddesses or to mortals with the highest force value, the fact remains that it has the power to grant wishes and affect the balance of the world.
No wonder they chose to throw away the world and flood the land in Wind Waker. When they learned that their power was in the hands of a mortal, instead of returning to them, they chose to flood the world to wipe away the failed experiment that they had set up.
That's one way to interpret it. Another possible interpretation is that the Great Flood in the Wind Waker was meant to be a purification of sorts, a way to cleanse the world of the evil that had taken root and to allow for a fresh start. It's also worth noting that in the Wind Waker, the Triforce species are not in the hands of mortals but are hidden away. So it's unclear whether the Triforce was actually a factor in the decision to flood the world.
I'm afraid to say that isn't true, Fi. Ganondorf had the pieces when he broke free from the Sacred Realm. Zelda was in possession of her piece, and that piece would later be split into two, with the larger one being used to power the Tower of the Gods. Courage broke apart into 8 pieces when the Hero of Time was sent back to his childhood, and the pearls were used as a means of establishing a new hero to replace the old one that Princess Zelda inadvertently deleted. But all of that is beside the point. What is clear is that when the goddesses returned to the world, due to the sheer outcry of prayers from the people, they found that this world was horribly out of control. Their relic was in the hands of mortals, something they had never intended. And worse, if my line of reasoning is correct, this situation would imply that the one that they entrusted that power to, Goddess Hylia, had betrayed them and tampered with the failsafe mechanic they set up. Let's face it, if this is all true, then the goddess's intent would have been that if mortals had gotten a hold of the relic, it was then meant to split apart and leave the world, causing it to decay into nothing. The Great Hyrule Fantasy was nothing more than the Great Hyrule Experiment, and Hylia chose to go against their will. I think I know what you're going to say, Fi. But how likely is it that Hylia betrayed the Golden Goddesses in order to ensure the survival of her favorite people, the Hylians?
It's difficult to say how likely it is that Hylia betrayed the Golden Goddess's trust, as there is no direct evidence to support or refute this theory. However, it is possible that Hylia acted in the best interest of her people, the Hylians, by altering the Triforce's mechanics to ensure that it remained within Hyrule and did not leave the world, causing it to decay. It's also possible that the Golden Goddesses may have intended for the Triforce to remain in mortal hands, but simply did not anticipate the consequences of doing so. We may never know the full extent of their intentions and the role that Hylia played in altering the Triforce's mechanics.
You are right that we may not, but this is the role of a theorist. Overall, this has painted a dark picture of what really happened back then, and it is something I'm going to have to ponder on more before taking action. All the same, I think it's time for you to return to your rest. Thank you, Fi, for the conversation.
But of course, Master Belmont. If you have any other questions, feel free to ask them as I will respond to the best of my abilities. Do you disagree with my assessment? Leave a message in the comments, and there is a 99.684% chance Master Pixel will respond to you. Did you know that Master Pixel has a Patreon? He puts extraordinary effort into this channel and is trying to reach 1,000 subscribers. If you wish to support his endeavors, pledging to his Patreon would increase his happiness by 64.2913%. You would also gain access to his Patreon where you could talk with him directly about his upcoming episodes. I have left a link in the description. Farewell, I look forward to future conversations.